Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to those of you who are in the Europe and London markets. Our webinar today is Build New XPages Apps and Modernize Existing Notes Databases Without Any XPages Skills. So that directly applies to me, of course. Our presentation today will be done by Simon Peake and Matthew Fileman from We4IT. And just a couple of housekeeping items before we begin. We will have a questions and answer session at the end of Simon's presentation. So if you do have a question that comes to your mind during the presentation, go ahead and type it in so it's queued in. And the way you do that is you expand your GoToWebinar control panel, and there will be a section called questions. If you'll expand that, then you can go ahead and type in your question, and then it will be queued for Simon and Matthew to respond at the end of the presentation. Also, as a reminder to everyone that your attendance to this webinar today does enter you into the drawing to win a trip to the MWLUG conference in Atlanta, August 19th to the 21st. That is a large user group conference. And then, or you could choose to win the new Mac Pack. I know a lot of us like that prize that we usually do at Connections, but this year it's a little bit changed with the new addition to the Apple Watch. So if you win this, you can choose the trip, or you get the Mac Pack, which is all three of those items. Okay, so I know you're not all here for the Mac Pack. You're here to listen to Simon speak. So Simon, I'm going to turn the time over to you. And I'll let you know as soon as we see your screen. All right, we see it. You're live.
Fantastic. So first things first, can I enter the prize draw as well?
Of course. You're presenting, right? You're here.
Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day. My name is Simon Peake, and this session is about Aveedo, the solution from We4IT, which allows developers to create new XPages apps and to modernize or mobilize existing apps without any knowledge of XPages. At the end of the session, we will be joined by my colleague Matthew for the Q&A. So ask questions as we go, and we will do our best to answer them at the end. So I'm speaking to you from Cornwall in the UK. Matthew is joining us from near London, and I can see that you guys are from all over. Okay, so let's get on with this. Nowadays, we expect to be able to access all sorts of information anytime, anywhere. Maps, banking information, Facebook, and so on. Most of us have access to work email via Traveller, for example. And you might also have connections on your mobile devices to give you access to some internal company data. But what about the wealth of other information that is being held in other company systems? Whilst attending events this year, like Connected in Orlando and Engage in Ghent, I was struck by the number of organizations wanting Notes applications to be made available in the browser and on mobile devices. Now, people have been talking about this for a long time, but finally it seems to be something that is moving from the drawing board into real life. I guess the majority of people I was talking to had quite mature IT environments with systems in place to handle most of their business processes, but all of them were in organizations that were in the process of change. They were busy growing or merging or splitting or just plain evolving. New applications were required. Applications needed to be modernized and brought to the browser. In some cases, organizations were moving away from the Notes client. And another common feature was that they were busy, really busy maintaining all their existing applications, busy creating new applications. And if you want to do something like bring apps to the browser, you may find you don't have enough developers, or not enough developers maybe with the right skills to do the job. So there are still lots and lots of people out there without XPages experience, and I reckon that less than a third of the developers I speak to are happy with their knowledge of XPages. One of the first people I spoke to when the showcase opened in Orlando this year was working for a high-tech construction company, and she was really an administrator. Well, she was one of those administrators who had also developed most of their internal notes applications. But now she was being asked to bring apps to tablets for those project managers who were working out of the office on construction sites. So not only was she administering their notes infrastructure and maintaining existing applications, but now she was being asked to mobilize them as well. Oh, and management wanted all of this done in the next couple of months. Which brings us to the first poll. Scott.
Okay, so we have a poll today, a couple of poll questions. And the first one is, oops, first of all, a typo. I apologize. That should be, do you feel that you have the XPages skills you need to deliver the solutions your organization is asking for? So yes or no. Let's see where we're at. So we already have half of us voted already. So everybody's engaged. That's good. Still awake. So Simon, you're doing great as a presenter. So right, we're almost there. Another 3 or 4 seconds. We have 10% of the people who are a little bit shy today. Now we're almost at 100%. There we go. All right, so I'm going to close the poll and I'll display the results and we'll see where we're at. So the results are 76% of us say no, we do not have the skills that to deliver what our organization is looking for. So only 24% of us have the skills. All right,
Okay.
that's why we're here.
Well, that's pretty much bang on for my perception of the market in general.
Yep, so we're back to your screen, Simon.
Okie dokie. Thank you. So we think that Aveedo could be the missing piece to the puzzle. It's a solution which allows new XPage applications to be developed very rapidly, and it can also be used to modernize existing apps without the need for knowledge of XPages. Aveedo could be used to put a new front end, including all the display and much of the business logic, on an existing database, or to create a brand new application from the ground up. You can create new business apps without even having to kick off Domino Designer, and you can do it really fast. We reckon that simple applications can be created in minutes, average applications in a day or two, and complex applications in a couple of weeks. And when I say complex, I mean an app that could take months to create if you're using Domino Designer. You can modernize existing Notes client apps to state-of-the-art browser-based applications without changing the underlying app. And this is important because typically as soon as you breathe on an application, you discover all sorts of problems with that app. It doesn't help that most of the apps we're maintaining were written by somebody else long ago who didn't actually document the work they were doing. You can mobilize your applications to use them on smartphones and tablets, and you can also add workflow to applications simply and easily using a visual GUI. Which brings us to our second poll, Scott.
Okay, we'll do one more poll. And this one, hopefully I've got all the letters in the poll question. This one is, in terms of resources, meaning time, personnel, and skills, what is your organization's greatest challenge when it comes to XPage development? Is it creating new applications? Is it modernizing existing applications? Bringing new or existing apps to mobile devices?
And the question isn't limited to XPages development. It's just in general of these of these areas which represents the greatest challenge.
All right, we're already at 80% of us have voted. Let's give us about 3 more seconds here. We'll wait for that last vote. Come on, don't be shy. All right, well, I think we've got everybody's vote that we're going to get. I'm going to share the results. And the results are 8%, their challenge is creating new applications, 56% modernizing existing applications, and 36% bringing new or existing apps to mobile devices.
All right, yep, interesting. Okay, so we're talking about Domino, so we're in a very mature environment, and most of us already have the applications that we need, and so there's not that much new development going on. It's all about doing things to existing apps. So thank you. Okay. So enough talk. Let's have a little demo. Let's have a look at what Aveedo might look like for a user, or what an application developed using Aveedo might look like for a user. Okay, so here's one I prepared earlier. This is a simple CRM system, and an application like this could be created in Aveedo in less than 1 day. Actually, an application this simple could probably be created in 4 or 5 hours. What you're looking at is a portal containing a series of portlets that can contain views or documents, charts, and in the top right-hand corner of the screen, we can see that we've also integrated mail, calendaring, same time, and connections. So over on the left-hand side, this portlet here is showing a company view. It's showing a bunch of company documents. Next, we've got a news widget, which is configured to display a couple of documents with current news. And there's another portlet over here showing a chart. This is a chart of orders. If I click on a particular year, 2014, then we drill down to the next level of information in this chart, which is showing who those orders came from. Now, back to my company view. If I open a document, it launches a new browser tab, and we see a document. It's got a bunch of fields in it. The fields are stored in different panels, so the screen is broken up into different panels to present the information more clearly. But it's just a bunch of fields and an embedded view down here. If I go back to my main portal, one of the features of Aveedo that you get out of the box with no extra work is some wiring, which allows you to filter the contents of these portlets. So if I click on the filter button by this company, then the other linked portlets in the view, in the portal, will display appropriate information. So if I filter on this company, We4IT, My documents portlet is now showing me all of the documents relating to We4IT. The locations portlet is showing me just We4IT locations, and so on. I might choose then to filter on the We4IT UK location, and then this will show me down here in the contacts portlet that the people working in the We4IT UK location are Han Solo, Kent Clark, and Lewis Lane. Another feature of the portlets is the ability to mark documents as favorites. So for example, Clark Kent is marked as a favorite, and if I filter this portlet, then this is now only showing me documents marked as favorites. It might be interesting if you're a salesperson and you want to mark your hottest prospects so you can get them all, make them more visible. This portal layout can be fixed to prevent users from screwing it up, or you can make it customizable, or it can be set to allow some users to modify it and not others. And you can have multiple portals as well. So you might have a portal for the salespeople, which gives them the information they need on a day-to-day basis, and the sales director might have access to that portal, but he might also have a second portal which can be configured as a sales director's dashboard. And you can also apply themes to these portals, and we'll see more about that later. One final feature of the portal view is the ability to apply inline actions. So without actually opening any of these documents, for example, you can trigger an action for the highlighted document. So I might want to create a new location for the currently selected document. So you hover over the particular document and then trigger the inline actions button to see the possible options. And if you want a more traditional representation of the data, you can also go to the actual underlying views themselves. So if I want to get a full company view, then I can go and get the all by company view, and you get what looks very much like a traditional notes view. Okay. So this is how it works. Aveedo requires a Domino server, surprise, surprise. You would generally use an existing server. It certainly doesn't need its own server, or you might even want to use an XWorks server. So that's the bottom layer here. Then you have one or more databases, which are the storage containers. These could be existing databases that you want to modernize. So the databases that make up an existing CRM system, for example, or they could be new databases that you are creating. These databases are primarily just for data storage. Then we have the objects, which define the data and the relationships between objects. So, for example, you might define a company object by specifying that it contains a company name, an address, and a phone number. And then next layer up, you have the definition of the layout of the data on the screen, things like views, menus, and so on. Now, all of this, the data and the layout, could just be in one NSF, but it generally makes more sense to have the data in one database and the front end in another. Or maybe you have an application comprised of several notes databases and you create a new Aveedo database to store the new front end to the entire system. So far we've looked at what Aveedo can help you achieve, and you've had a glimpse of what it might look like from the user's point of view. Now there's a bunch of cool stuff in Aveedo, things like the responsive design so that apps developed in Aveedo will automatically work on mobile devices, multi-language support, so you might want to support your system in English and American, say, integration with Office, support for rapid theming, a workflow modeler and engine, and a wizard. And we'll look at some of these features now. The responsive design means that portals automatically rearrange themselves for different devices, whether that's a desktop browser, tablet, phone, and this is achieved without any actual effort. However, you might prefer to instead create specific layouts for specific devices. So, for example, for phones, you might have a very simple layout showing just a few portlets containing just the most important fields. For tablets, a slightly richer layout containing more information and a full fat version with the complete set of portlets, fields and charts and so on for users with larger screens, laptops and desktops. And Aveedo will then present the appropriate layout to the user. So if I go back to my the app we were looking at a second ago, I go back to my portlet view. So this is the full fat version that we're seeing here. And if I resize my browser, you'll see that as I shrink it down, everything resizes until you get to a certain point when the menus at the top actually vanish. So what we saw first of all was that the portlets in this view, first they reorganize themselves, so instead of being spread across the screen, they're now in a list going down. And when I went beyond a certain point, so I went beyond sort of tablet size, and I'm now down at sort of smartphone size. Well, let's get a bit smaller. So we're now down at smartphone size, and the views across the top, the menus across the top have gone away. They are now all in this sidebar here, so they're still there, but you have to click on the sidebar button to get to them. Also, if I actually open one of these documents, instead of the fields being spread across the width of the device, they're now all one on top of the other. Embedded views, obviously, you get to scroll across, but where we can stack the fields, we'll do that. And then I'll go back to full size, and the information spreads itself back out across the screen. So that's how the what I just showed you there was the responsive nature of Aveedo. As I said, you could decide not to, instead of using the automatic resizing, the responsive feature, you could, as I say, develop a separate set of layouts specifically for devices with smaller screens, displaying just a subset of information. Okay, next. Oh yeah, so we also support the ability to rapidly change the look and feel of Aveedo using themes. without any need for coding, although it should be stressed that if you want to write your own CSS, you absolutely can. So if I go back to Aveedo and I'll go into the designer. If I edit my user interface settings, I can switch from one theme, the verse theme, to the alternate, whatever, theme. And if I now refresh my browser, here is a completely different look and feel. It's a slightly smaller, slightly narrower view with a pretty background picture, because that makes all the difference. Different fonts is what it looks like. Okay, I'll switch this back to my verse theme. Did I save that? Yes, okay. Now, that was just switching between themes. If I go back into Designer and go into the Themes option, I actually have the ability to click on the theme and edit the CSS directly. Or we have incorporated a third-party solution, UIKit, which gives you functionality which we've called the theme roller, which allows you to very simply update the theme without writing any CSS. So if this would just be so good as to load up, that would be fantastic. Nope, not working. Let's try that again. Okay, I'm not sure why this isn't working. It was working when I tested it earlier. The joys of the live demonstration. The joys of the live demonstration. Okay, so this allows you to change the theme actually just by clicking on checkboxes. So you don't have to go and code the color difference, the color change that you're making to the background color. All you have to do is click on the appropriate box, and advanced mode gives you a whole bunch more options to choose from. Once you've finished setting this up in the UIKit, then you export the CSS and import it back into Aveedo. Okay, so that was theming. We also support multi-language as well. I don't know if anyone on this call speaks Danish, Russian, or Japanese, but according to Google Translate, this says that we support any number of languages, right to left, and it's very simple. The way it works is very straightforward. Once you have created your app in whatever base home language you're using, the dictionary of labels can then be exported to a text file. You translate the text in the flat text file and import it back into the application. Very straightforward. The next feature I want to touch on is the workflow modeler and engine, which allows you to very simply add workflow to your Aveedo applications. Functionality which we think is a bit of a killer feature. We provide a visual We provide a visual drag and drop interface that is easy enough for users, the people in the business, the people who understand the workflow that they're asking for in the first place. It's easy enough for them to work with. As you can see from this screenshot, it's a little bit reminiscent of Visio. Once they have used the modeler to describe, to draw what they want, the process is then taken over by a technician, a developer, or maybe an administrator who can write a bit of formula code, who will then complete the workflow. The module comes in two parts. There's the modeler, which is what we're seeing here, and then the underlying workflow engine, which actually does the heavy lifting. Now, if I go into my application, go into the workflow editor, this is the place where the modeler is used by the end user. They simply drag stuff across the screen and link up these different, well, let me show you. So let's say that I want to create a workflow for a business trip approval process. Okay, so business trip, that's the start of the process. And then over here we have a decision box. So approve or deny. Link these two up. And if the process is approved, it goes that way. And if it's denied, then it goes this way. For each of these steps, they would then add a description about what is what they want to have happen in that step, and then the process would be handed over to a technician. In the application that we've got here, there is actually a business trip approval process already created. So I'm actually going to open this existing approval workflow process, and we can see what a completed, very simple process might look like. So here's the start of the business trip that is then pushed forward for approval into this next node, and then the different outcomes are described over here. Now, for each step, you enter a description, and you specify things like which fields are mandatory. You specify maybe an email, so you can specify a template email with containing placeholders, and then those placeholding fields are populated by the workflow engine when the workflow actually runs. So this is the actual workflow itself in Designer, and this is what it looks like in Aveedo. Let me just launch a workflow. So I'm going to launch the business trip workflow. So it's saying, what's it for? I want to go to, what do I want to go? I want to go to the Icon UK user group meeting. I'm not sure when it starts. I think it's actually in September, but let's just specify these dates. I'm going to get the train. I want to learn stuff. If anyone is on this call in the UK, by the way, I highly recommend a trip to London in September to go to Icon UK at the IBM South Bank. Okay, so here is my request. I'm now going to launch this. Now, I've actually designed this workflow so I am the approver. Obviously, normally this would go to somebody else. Cool, that's done. So now if I go into my mail file, what I now see is that I've just received an email in German, as it happens, but it can be customized for multi-language, where there's I've been asked to approve this particular travel request. If I go into my business trips portlet, I can see that here is my request. I want to go to Icon UK, and if I edit this, I can then grant myself approval and go to the next step. Oops. Great, and that's now complete. So I've made the request for travel, I've approved it myself, and if I were to go back to my mail file, I should see another email where it says that the business trip has been approved. No, I approved it twice. Okay, so that's the workflow modeler. This module actually was taken from one of our existing applications, Process Flow, and we simply imported it into Aveedo. Now, the last feature we're looking at today is the migration wizard. This provides you with a way to create a basic Aveedo application from an existing notes database with minimal effort. I have to stress that although the feature is very cool, it is not going to magically upgrade your application, but it will give you a flying start. Now, I'm going to go back into Aveedo and close down some of these other tabs. And I've gone to an empty version of Aveedo. This is where I'm going to start running my migration wizard. If I go into Designer and run the migration wizard, I need to choose a database, the discussion database. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new front end to this existing application. The database exists, it has documents, it works perfectly well inside the Notes client, but I want to make it work in I want to put it on a browser and create a new front end for that browser interface. So these are all the existing forms inside the existing NSF, and I've got many forms, but I only want 2 of them visible inside my new user interface. So I choose those 2 forms. You remember hopefully seeing that when I opened a document inside the sample Aveedo application, we had the fields were spread amongst different panels. So I'm going to choose a form and create a couple of new panels for this form. So I'm going to put the several fields in there. So these are existing fields from the main topic form in my underlying notes database. So I want a subject field, a from field, and a categories field. And the other field, the only other field I want is the body field. Now I can give names to these panels, and that is the main topic form fully configured. I'll now do the same thing with a different form, the response form. Now in this case, on the response form, I want some different fields. I want the original subject and from, and again I want the body field down here. I can do other things at the same time in this UI. I actually have the ability to change the names of the field labels as I go. Next, I want to configure some views, or in this case, just one view. I'll choose the author view, and I tell it which forms I'll be referencing from this view, whether I want the view to be a visible view or not. And then this is the existing view as it appears as it exists in Notes. I'm just going to add all of those fields. I could drag selectively, but I'm going to choose all of them. And that's it. So the discussion database has been had a new front end created, and if I go back to this to my Aveedo UI and refresh this, I should find that I can access the author view in the discussion database in my browser. Now, it doesn't look particularly great because I haven't finished, because all I've done is I've run the wizard. I can now go into this and spend a bit more time improving the look and feel of the application, but this fundamentally works. And there was no smoke and mirrors there at all. Now, that was the migration wizard. I'm going to show one more aspect of, I'm going to make a change to this database to show you what the designer UI looks like. So in this document, I've automatically got the close and edit buttons, but it would be nice if I had a reply button. So if I go into Designer, we'll look and see how this is created. Now, for reasons I'm not going to bore you with in great detail, I've actually got to change a setting for each of these two forms because there is existing data in the database, and I want to and the wizard made an assumption that was, in this case, incorrect. So I'm just going to change this. It's actually the, what I'm changing here is the source key field. So I'm now making a relationship between the main topic and the response forms. So that's established a relationship. Now I just need to go into the main topic document layout. And we can see here the different panels that the wizard created for us. Here's the main panel with the subject, from, and categories fields, and the body panel with the body field. And I need a new action. And the action is going to be called reply. It's going to create a new document. It's going to use the response layout, which was created using the wizard. And the last thing I need to do is to map a field. Okay, so if I did all of that correctly, then when I go back into Aveedo and open up one of these documents, I should now have a reply button, which actually does work. Okay, so this, you've seen how the wizard runs, you've seen some of the features from the user perspective, you've seen a little bit of what the designer piece of Aveedo looks like, and that was the developer experience. Very straightforward, very easy to use, very easy to get started. And once you've gotten started, the actual process of modernizing existing applications or indeed creating new ones is extremely rapid. And I can see in the questions area one or two questions on that specific point. So this takes us neatly into the Q&A section. And
right.
I believe there are some questions queued up. Scott, are you there?
I'm here. Yes, we do have some questions. So yes, as you said, there are a couple of questions about designing. So the first question is, and just a reminder to everyone, if you expand your GoToWebinar control panel,
Matthew there.
now it is time to type in questions if you haven't already done so. Right, Matthew, are you online as well?
I am indeed.
All right, perfect. So the first question is, are any design elements added to the target database, or is it all in a separate design?
Shall I feel that one, Simon? Yeah. Basically, most of the design documents are held in the Aveedo database, with the exception of it does create a few views in the source data with the source data database, just to speed up the views and make them more responsive. That may change in the future. Obviously, ideally, we wouldn't put anything into the source data, but the only thing that is added to the source database at the moment are some views.
All right.
And by the way, I'm back.
Okay, perfect. All right. Yeah, the second question is, if we use Aveedo to add an interface to the application, can we modify the raw XPages if needed?
Not really, or at least not the raw XPages. Basically, everything that you saw created by Simon is fully editable within the Aveedo Designer, which is part of the web UI. It's either exposed or not exposed depending on your role in Aveedo. But in the designer area, you can change all the layouts, you can change all the view layouts, you can change the underlying data structures. Everything is available from there. But you can't get at the raw X page that's delivering the view. And to be absolutely honest with you, I hope you don't think I'm flattering you here. You don't need to get at the underlying X page. It's completely unnecessary. Everything you would need to do, you can get at through the Aveedo Designer.
Okay, perfect. Next question is, well, not how, but does Aveedo respect domino security? So, if we have an ACL set, yeah.
Very good and very important question. Aveedo does respect entirely the underlying nodes security, domino security. So Aveedo allows you to add layers of security to it. So you can restrict things on various bases, not just the ACL, but also everything down to a field. You can say this is accessible by somebody or not, and you can say it's accessible under certain conditions, pretty much as you can in Domino anyway. But fundamentally, Aveedo always respects the underlying security settings of the Domino database that you're using to store the data. So you can't override anything that's been set in the ACL. You can only add layers to it. So it's built on top of the existing ACL.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Next question. Can you speak a little bit about the multilingual support? Does Aveedo do translations via some cloud translator or the translations provided by the developer?
Simon, shall I take that one as well? someone's going again. Yes, the translation isn't done automatically. It doesn't use a cloud translation tool. Basically, there's a facility within the designer. Once you've created your Aveedo database in the base language, so that could be English, German, French, whatever. Once you've created that in the base language, you can export it, and it provides a text file with all the labels in it, and allows you to write in a new language. And you can have many of these. So on top of the base language, you could have 10, 15, 100 other language translations that will. Simon's showing one here. So on what you've got here is a text file, basically, with what the original label is. For example, a very weird label there, CRMDD delegate processing, and what that is in German. Delegierbearbeitung, so it's delegate editing. So yeah, you provide one of these files and then re-import it, and it will provide it, import a new one of these for each language. So the basic idea is you generate this text file, you send it out to your translator, the translator translates everything, and then you re-import what's the translated document. Again, not a magic bullet, but it does get the job done. And you can, as a user, you can select which language you want to see it in, and pretty much do that on the fly if you want to. So if you want to view it French one day and German the next, knock yourself out.
Perfect.
That would probably apply to our Swiss customers.
Exactly. All right. That's always an interesting question in the Domino environment. So, perfect. The next question is what is the licensing model? Is it by application, by server?
We are licensing this per user. So if a user has 5 devices and he's accessing 50 applications, it's still one user. So very simple licensing model.
Okay. So no designer model at all. It's just number of users.
Yes, you can actually have, if you decide you didn't want the workflow module, for example, there are options you can choose. So the product is modular, so the workflow module is separate to the rest, but I think under normal circumstances you would take all of the modules.
Okay, perfect. In order to access, okay, the next question is, in order to access Aveedo from a mobile device, is there an application that is installed, or is it all browser?
It's all browser. It's a good question. So, is there a native app? The answer to that is not at the moment. As you can imagine, it's something that we are looking at very seriously.
Okay, perfect. Does Aveedo lend itself for website use? And if so, what would the pricing model be for that?
No.
Okay.
One of the issues about, I mean, Matthew can answer more fully perhaps, but it is we need notes IDs to authenticate, and a website has got lots of anonymous users typically.
That's just to add that I hate talking about blue sky stuff at the moment, but we are looking at a way of providing anonymous access that still retains the integrity of the database, because we can see that this is an issue for some people. So all I can say at the moment is watch this space, but it is something we are thinking about.
All right, so everybody start sending in your holiday wish list to Week for IT. There we go.
Please do. On a serious note, please, any suggestions of things you'd like to see, would be welcomed. It's an ever-evolving product, so chances are if you want to see a feature, someone else does as well. So.
Yep, exactly. Here's a great question. Does it allow you to connect to external data sources? So I'm assuming to other data sources other than a notes database.
That's a more complex question than it sounds. In a very simple sense, yes. You can, obviously, you can use JDBC and talk to relational databases and the like, and there is some mechanism for allowing for that. We have provided interfaces to streams and widgets, news feeds, that kind of stuff. We are working currently on integrating connections to a far greater extent than we already do, and there is definitely a plan to provide direct interfaces to things like SharePoint, external databases. At the moment, it's limited to providing using things like JDBC and stuff, but that will expand. It's definitely on the roadmap to provide access to external sources.
Okay, great. One more question coming in. If you're using the note security model, then how do users log in?
They log in through the standard notes username, the web notes username and password combination. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much it already.
All right, excellent. One question that hasn't come in yet, but that I've thought of is, which versions of Domino databases do you support?
We support 8.5.3 onwards.
Okay. Excellent. All right, let me just double check. So we're almost reaching our full hour here, so let's do a last call for questions. And just as a reminder, there are a couple questions come in for pricing. So we don't discuss in our webinars in exact pricing. We do discuss models. So we've got your question here about pricing, and Simon or someone from We4IT will follow up with you on those direct pricing questions for the price per user. So that will be coming, but that's handled offline. Okay, here's a good, interesting question. It says, I have a notes database that does real-time lookups to SAP using the Lotus connectors. Can this app be mobilized with Aveedo?
I'm going to say right now, not directly. I'm just being cautious there. If it isn't, if I'm right and it's not directly supported right now, it would be relatively trivial to make it supported. Yeah, I definitely would talk to anybody who wanted to talk about that with somebody. Yeah, it's definitely worth talking about. Okay. The only thing I'm just trying to remember back to last time I used connectors. I'm sorry, I'm being a bit vague here. I'll look into that a bit more.
We've got an SAP connector, but it's not live, is it? It's
no, it's not live. Definitely, you could do it by using the overnight processing with we can't name of the products escape me now, but you could definitely do it that way. But to do the live processing, I don't think we would support it directly right now, but it wouldn't
not
be
right now.
To do.
It has been requested in the past.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, watch this space, I'm afraid.
Yep. Okay, not a problem. Yeah, all good features come in time. One question that I think has not come up. What about databases that they've already started some type of XPages conversion? How would that affect the Aveedo implementation?
To be honest, it wouldn't affect it at all. You wouldn't necessarily be able to use the XPages stuff you'd already put in there, but the underlying database, the actual data store, could be used without any adverse effects. Not quite sure whether that was the answer you wanted, but
I mean, the point here is that we tend to utilize an existing database merely as a data store. And the Aveedo application, the Aveedo database, sits on top of it and is used, and that's where you create your front end. So the Aveedo database has the front end, what you look at, and it looks through the Aveedo database into the underlying data in the existing NSF.
Okay, perfect.
Can continue to be used, but
right. So we just that would be great. Okay, well, I think we're at the end of our, one more last question. Okay, whew, she's barely made it in. Are there any problems with Notes apps that use IEI, which was formerly LEI, to back into
okay.
DB2s?
That was the the product I was trying to think of earlier. IEI shouldn't be a problem at all because fundamentally that's running in the background and loading the back-end data, so you should be able to use that directly.
Excellent. Okay. Well, that was a great question to wrap things up with. Simon, I'm going to turn time back over to you for any for last minute wrap up and how to contact you and We for IT.
Super. Well, okay, so thanks for that, Scott. Just before, I mean, that's about it, but before I go, I should mention that if you want to see Aveedo in more detail, we would naturally be happy to arrange a trial for you. Just drop me an email on the screen. Now, I mentioned at the beginning, I think that there was a special offer, and anyone attending this webinar can not only receive 10 free licenses of Aveedo, but in addition to the software itself, you will also get 2 hours of free Aveedo consulting from one of our top developers. And if he's not available, then we can always rely on Matthew, I guess.
Thank you very much, Simon.
Ouch.
Sorry, I am kidding. Matthew is about as good as it gets.
So, yeah, that's still not saying very much, Simon.
Okay, so get in touch with us if you've got any further questions or if you would like a handheld trial of the software. So that brings us to the end. Thank you very much for watching and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Matthew, for your time, and thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a great day.